Okay. Thank you all for answering the question. I think we can honestly get started, and we're going to start with introductions of all me and my colleagues. My name is Giselle Torres. Thank you all so much for coming today. I'm the Climate and Energy Program Assistant at Prairie Rivers, and I've been here for about a year now. I've done a couple lobby days now, but this is my first one actually co-captaining it, so I'm very excited, and thank you all for being with me. I'm going to pass it off to Cindy.
Thanks, Giselle. I'm Cindy Shepard. I'm the Green Teams Director for Faith in Place, which is a partner organization. I love working with Prairie Rivers Network on Lobby Day. And I think that this will be my 10th or 12th year that I've gone to Lobby Day, and I always enjoy it. Andrew, pass it to you.
Thanks, Cindy. Hi, everybody. This is Andrew Rain with Prairie Rivers Network. I'm the Climate Policy Director. Probably my sixth or seventh lobby day. Well, then maybe more, probably more. But I won't be there, so we can't count it because I'm going to be in Thailand for a vacation. So I'll be with you all in spirit, but not in physical body. So anyways.
You will be missed, but we shall go on. Okay, so with that, I think we can go ahead and get started. So thank you all again for being here. I know I said that a couple times, but we just wanted to take this time to kind of do a little deeper dive into what we're going to be talking about at the lobby day. So yeah, oh, that's one too far. So some of our goals is just to, like I said, understand why we're going to be there on January 7th. Why are we being called upon? And just kind of learn more about the different policies that we're going to be supporting. And then after that, we're going to pass it back to Cindy, who has, as said, has many experience lobby days, and she's just going to break down some of the logistics for it. Also on this slide, we have a QR code if you haven't registered yet. Go ahead and do that now if you're intrigued. But yeah, as we kind of broke it down, this is Prairie Rivers and Faith in Place supporting the Illinois Clean Job Coalition. The Illinois Clean Job Coalition is a big grassroots statewide group where we have helped pass a lot of groundbreaking clean energy bills that help phase out carbon emissions from energy and transportation. But our work isn't done yet in either of those sectors, and honestly, those bills haven't even touched on buildings. So we do need to take action, and that's why we're all here today. Back in April, the Illinois Clean Job Coalition passed a policy platform made of 3 different policies. We're going to walk through each of them today with a little bit of a deeper dive on the Clean and Reliable Grid Act. But just to briefly go through them all, the Clean and Equitable Transportation Act helps us achieve zero emissions in our transportation sector by expanding our walking, biking, public transit, and electric vehicles. The Clean Reliable Grid Act will help us achieve 100% clean renewable energy by having a fossil fuel power grid. And then our Clean and Healthy Building Act will really work on transitioning away from using fossil fuels in homes into clean energy so that we can achieve 100% clean buildings by 2050. And with that, we're going to get into the bills a bit more. We're going to start off with the Clean and Equitable Transportation Act. So basically, when you think of air pollution, a lot of people often think of, you know, those big industrial factories puffing out air. And it's not just that. The transportation sector in Illinois emits over 33% of all of Illinois CO2 emissions. So we have a big issue there. Not only that, but also a lot of neighborhoods lack the basic roadway safeties and basic pedestrian and biking infrastructures that we need in order to have a safe community and make it more walkable and more bikeable. Not only that, but there's also a lot of vehicle-on-vehicle crash rates. Back in 2022, there was over 300,000 accidents in crashes alone. And so the more people driving, the more people are on the roads. And just high crash rates cause a huge public health and economic burden. So these are some of the issues that we are facing today in our transportation sector. Something else that we like to highlight is not only do we have these types of effects, but these problems are also inequitable. Right here, we have 2 different graphs of kind of the Chicago region, one being high crash areas and one being the air quality. As you can see, a lot of these communities overlap where they have really high crash rates and really poor air quality. Usually this is because a lot of highways and a lot of truck ports are built in the same community. And so these end up affecting low income, majority Black and brown neighborhoods the most. And it kind of just shows how like these effects build on top of each other and how they really intersect. It's not just one issue or the other. Oftentimes, it's a lot of things affecting one community at one time. To the right, you see some very, I find interesting facts, kind of alarming as well. Taking a step back, transportation insecurity, just wanted to define that for you guys real quick, is a condition where one is unable to move from place to place in a safely or timely manner due to the absence of resources needed for transportation. So some things that I found alarming was that more than half of those people who experience this transportation insecurity also are experiencing poverty. And then on your bottom left, you see a statistic where Hispanic and Black adults face up to 10% more transportation insecurity than their white counterpart, which is just a little insane. Moving on, this does not only affect Chicago, but affects all areas of Illinois. Right here, we have a little drawing of some of the cities in central and southern Illinois. And it kind of shows that besides downtown areas, there's a lot of lack of basic infrastructure. There's no crosswalks, there's often no curb ramps, and there's often sidewalks that are completely disarrayed and sometimes not safe for walking on. Um, Going back to Chicago, something that we wanted to highlight was that we do have an overall big lack of funding to support the Chicago area and all of the public transit. This graph kind of demonstrates how much other cities that are as big as ours support their transit system. And as you can see, the Chicago region shares least or funds the least amount in the public transit, which is just insane, especially when you think it compared to New York and especially Philadelphia, a city that's much smaller than ours. We should be putting money into our public transit. Another big concern that's happening is that we're currently facing a 700 million funding gap that will happen by 2026. And so these are issues that we can't ignore because without the money, our public transit system would just collapse and so many people rely on it and it's so essential to Chicago. So these are some of the issues, and now we're going to talk about how the Clean and Equitable Transit Act addresses some of these things. So the act is made up of three different policies. Each of these policies address different things, one of them being the robust public transit in Chicago. The goals with that would be to integrate all of the different systems, PACE, Metro CTA, to give a better rider experience and make everything smoother and more cohesive. And it also makes sure that the funding is sufficient, like the slide I was just addressing, because we do have that funding gap and it needs to be addressed. Not only that, but it would also encourage safe and more active modes of transportation. That means people who don't have cars and want to take biking and want to walk would actually feel safe to do so in their neighborhood. And not only that, but it also help with our greenhouse gas emissions by providing more of those different ways of getting around. Finally, we also want to really encourage and increase all of the electric vehicles that are purchased in Illinois. This is really essential, especially when it comes to our diesel trucks and our diesel school buses in situations where a child is going to school every day and having to go onto the school bus and inhale all those diesels. It's kind of essential that we start addressing those type of issues and switching over to electric vehicles that don't emit as many of those toxins. And so these are just some of the things that this act would do and enhance. And so we want to kind of show the impact of what would actually happen if our act was passed. And it would save some really great money. Cars have been the most expensive that they have been in years. You have to pay for gas, insurance, and all these other aspects. But if you switch to electric vehicles, you could save up to $345 a year. Not only that, but we could save up to about $2 billion just from crashes and also save 150 deaths. Doesn't sound like a huge number, but when you actually think of all the individual lives impacted, it's insane how much we can do by just switching over to more other modes of transportation. Not only that, but traffic delays, less cars on the roads means obviously less traffic, and people will save millions of hours, which is insane. And all we know is time is money. And not only that, but air pollution would also um, less air pollution would also lower the healthcare costs and saving up to like 400 million a year. And as well as getting people to do a more physical activities like walking and biking can also help improve our health and prevent up to 1,100 deaths a year. So these are just some of the impacts that these policies would make, which is absolutely life changing, and just amazing. And so with that, I'm going to pass it to Andrew, who's going to talk on clean power.
Thanks, Giselle. So yeah, so you're going to hear sort of from me about clean power, clean transportation, and then Cindy's going to talk about clean buildings. The whole suite of the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition platform. We're going to go to Springfield in January to advocate for the platform overall. But in clean power, there's very likely going to be a legislation that's looking to pass in lame duck, which means we'll be there able to actually influence something that is on the table to be discussed. So I'm going to go into the platform overall, but also identify those pieces that are going to be discussed in that lame duck session, which is when Lobby Day will be. So next slide, please. So if you've been a member for a long time, you probably are familiar with the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. If you're not, this is legislation that passed in 2021 that was really sort of a landmark climate legislation, not just for Illinois, but for the whole nation, setting us on a path to decarbonizing our electric sector while replacing it with renewables. And it also covered a suite of other things, including an equitable workforce for this transition, transitions for communities dependent on fossil fuels, so policy issues like utility accountability, various consumer benefits. There's sort of it was a big, broad legislation, and it has set us on a course. But we do need to come back and make sure that we're staying on that course. And as time has gone on, we've been seeing both gaps in just the reality of things that we've learned as a few years have passed here about where we need to keep on keeping us on the right path. So today we're going to talk about some of those challenges. So next slide. We've made a lot of progress on clean energy. This is a really great graph from a website that a colleague has put together, Derek Eater, who runs a coding group in Chicago, put together the Illinois Solar Map. And if you go to illinoissolarmap.com, it's a great website. So I highly recommend check it out. It shows where solar is built in the state, how many megawatts of production in different areas, and it also forecasts that based on data provided by sort of the planning agencies that have a queue of projects being proposed. And what you can see here is just really a staggering growth in the amount of solar that we have been able to construct. And I have this pulled out. I don't have the same graph for wind, but one of the challenges we're seeing is that the same graph for wind doesn't look the same. And we've really kind of plateaued on wind and stopped developing wind projects. And that's one of the sort of many challenges that I think need to be addressed. So next slide, please. Yeah, keep going. So this graph is from the U.S. Energy Information, EIA, Energy Information, anyways, EIA, which provides a lot of data about energy in the United States. And I've pulled out, this is for Illinois only, information about the different sources of, so net generation. So this is like actual megawatts of energy generated and then put on the grid. And you can see we have growth in renewables over the last few decades. Illinois remains very dependent on our nuclear fleet in order to meet our demand. You can see coal declining substantially, but some of that is being replaced by natural gas that's come online. And so while we've made a lot of progress, there's still a lot of progress to be done. And if you go to the next slide, you can see it as a percentage of our total generation. And so that share is something that we really need to keep growing and need to make sure that we have the policies in place to grow it. And more than that, we need to be thinking about the grid of our future and what we can do, what that grid of the future needs to look like, and how do we orient our policies to get us towards that. So next slide. What I want to talk about next is, and this challenge is one that is going to grow, because as you just heard from Giselle, and as you will hear from Cindy, we need to electrify everything. This is how we get to a decarbonized world, how we hit our climate targets, is by putting everything onto electricity, which can be produced cleanly versus burning fossil fuels. And so our demand for electricity is going to continue to rise. And so while we're increasing our share of renewable energy, it not only has to take over some of that energy that was previously made by fossil fuels, but it needs to even be more in order to meet the demands that we're going to have for the future, if we do indeed want to avert catastrophic climate change. Next slide. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about a vision of the future power sector, a vision of Illinois' clean energy grid and what that might look like. Next slide. And there's 6 different parts of that. Next slide, please. One is transmission. So our power grid of the future has the ability to move energy to where we need it, because it's not, the wind isn't always blowing or the sun isn't always shining here. We need the ability to get the energy around where we need it to go. And so transmission lines are a big part of where we need to go. Next slide, a little bit more detail here. And there's a lot of progress being made on this at the sort of not in the Illinois policy realm, but in the sort of the utilities are putting work into this. The federal government is. So we are seeing a series of upgrades down here in MISO territory, which is, nope, stay here, go back. In MISO territory, there's a process of updating our transmission lines, and the first phase of that is moving forward. The next phase is something that we're looking at now. This first phase was a lot of repowering, and that's a really great way to improve our transmission, is taking existing lines and either making them able to carry more, making sure they have the most updated technology. We can get more power out of our existing infrastructure, but we are going to need to also build new transmission. And so we need to be thinking about how we do that. We need to be engaging in that process, making sure that we, just like any institutional effort, we need to make sure that we're moving together as a collective forward, and that we are identifying sensitive areas, or the best way to build out so that we have the least impact on people while still building up our transmission grid. The policies that we have, actually, transmission, while it's a key part of the clean energy future, we don't have a ton of policies on transmission right now at a state level, because a lot of that's happening elsewhere. So I won't go too far into it other than what I've said. Next slide. So the next part of getting to there is that we simply need to build enough renewables to replace our fossil fuel power plants. As I've showed you in those graphs, we've got a lot to go, and then we need to go further in order to replace all of the new, or in order to power all of the new electric demand that we're going to have. So next slide. We're also going to need to have battery storage and smart rates. So we need to get smarter about how we're using our energy, and battery storage is one of the key components that wasn't really in the when we passed the legislation 2021. It wasn't really part of the narrative. Similar to how transmission and moving energy from place to place is critical for making the grid of the future work. No, you're good. You're good. You can go to the next one. Battery storage allows us to take energy for when the sun is shining and we're producing a ton from solar panels, the wind is really blowing, but the demand isn't there, we can store that. We can shift our load to the nighttime or to a less windy part of the day. So battery storage plays a key component, and we're really looking to start investing there. And we also need to fix some of our procurements. So one of the reasons that wind in particular has slowed down is that the way that our agencies sort of fund renewable energy, the incentives that are in place, the contracts that create those incentives are structured, creates uncertainty. And for large projects, that uncertainty sometimes means that the company isn't willing to invest because they don't know if down the road in 15 years, they will have funding. And so we need a solution that gives them certainty, that gets us to that grid, but still maintains affordability and still maintains, we don't want to we want to spend our money smart, because we need to figure out how to solve climate change and how to build out enough renewables. And the only way we're going to do that is by being smart about how we're spending our money. But we do need to have companies willing to build wind and solar. So there's a balance here, and I'll talk about some of the solutions in a minute. And really critical to the grid of the future, to our energy usage in the future, is figuring out how we can use less energy while we use more energy. So how can our light bulbs be more efficient? But it goes far beyond light bulbs. It goes towards our homes, it goes towards heating, it goes towards appliances. There are so many ways that we can do better, use less energy while we electrify everything. So next slide. What's really great about energy efficiency is when you think about the cost of the ways that we can, save a kilowatt saved is the same as a kilowatt generated. If I can make the lighting on my house use that much less energy, it's as if we're making more energy. So these two things are interchangeable in a lot of ways. And the cost of energy efficiency is the cheapest of all of the forms of energy production. You can see this graph has sort of the cost per megawatt hour, and energy efficiency is startlingly cheaper than the whole portfolio. Next slide. And the amount of savings you can get and the health benefits is really impressive with energy efficiency. Just in 2023, they have to do a lot of the utilities that implement the energy efficiency programs have to do a lot of reporting. The energy efficiency that was deployed in that year was enough to essentially pull an entire a peaker plant off the grid. And a peaker plant is like the natural gas plants that only turn on when the grid has the highest demand. They're really dirty. They're often located in places with high communities that are environmental justice communities that are vulnerable. And so pulling a whole peaker off the grid from our energy efficiency policies is really incredible. So we want to keep on investing in this way where we can end up saving a lot of money for just a little bit of money spent. Next slide. And so a couple of the things we need to do, one is we need to get some more parity between what ComEd and is doing in the northern region of the state and what Ameren is doing in the southern region of the state. ComEd has done a lot better than we have, and so we need to get Ameren and ComEd to be at parity. We also need to get large industrial users who have been opting out of these programs to start doing their part, so we can build more, we can get more energy efficiency deployed. Next slide. We need a diverse workforce, community benefits. CEJA actually has a lot of this covered, but as we implement new policies and we want to think about the workforce and leverage the programs, the workforce programs that we put in CEJA to support the clean energy. So as we build out battery storage, we want to make sure that the CEJA workforce hubs, which are leading in making sure our workforce is equitable, are also prepared to support the battery storage programs, and that the workforce has to have the same equity standards that we put in place for renewables in CEJA. Next slide. And we want to make sure that we're building this stuff in places that make sense, where it's needed most, where it best supports the grid. And yeah, so next slide. So that's sort of the vision of the future of the power sector, sort of all these pieces that we need to have come together. And so now I'm going to talk about what we're going to do in January to start chipping away at this process, and then also what we might do past January. So lame duck is the January legislative session. It's called lame duck because I guess it's just political lingo, but it means that it's the legislators who the last legislative session. So folks who have been voted out, this is their last chance to do anything. At the end of the lame duck session, they swear in the new legislators. Oftentimes there's movement, you can get bills passed in lame duck. We are working with the various parties. So it's not just the Illinois Clean Jobs Coalition, we're working with industry, the utilities, the governor's office. Everybody has kind of come together and said, okay, what can we do on energy? Something small now. What are the things we can get across the finish line? And then we can tackle some of the bigger stuff that might be more divisive in the spring. So we're getting a little bite of the apple here, and it's a great opportunity to start making progress. Energy efficiency is a big part of what's on the table, and looking to have discussions with those utilities about their energy efficiency programs and how they can be brought into up to date into 2025 instead of operating like it's still 2010. We're going to be doing an initial battery storage procurement. So this is sort of a first step of building a market for battery storage and incentivizing it with with the Illinois Power Agency renewable funds. This is just a first step. So instead of building a whole program, we're going to do a first procurement. There's a modeling that shows we need 3 gigawatts of battery storage on the grid by 2030. This first procurement would not get us all the way there, but it gets us started. And then we can figure out a more cohesive process for a larger, for ongoing procurement, because we're going to need to keep building battery storage beyond 2030 as we, again, grow the amount of renewables on the grid. One critical and kind of exciting point here is that we're proposing an Office of Energy Modeling. So energy modeling is this, what I mean by energy modeling, I mean, it's people who model the grid, our energy grid, and what it would look like with different, if we build this many windmills or this many coal plants, what does the grid look like? Often that has been done kind of behind closed doors with proprietary software. It's been done not by the state, but by, the environmental community will hire a consultant, and then the industry will hire a consultant, and everybody's bringing different models. We're proposing to have the state planning bureau in the Illinois Power Agency have an Office of Energy Modeling that would then develop their own model to give us their own open source model. So a way that we can all see a model, we can run it ourselves, they're running it using a shared data source. So to create this shared understanding of the grid, this is going to pay dividends down the long run, where we're going to have understanding of how our grid works, that can be a shared understanding and can help educate lawmakers as we move forward. We've got some fix to the contract process that's going to help us meet our renewable portfolio standards. So there's a couple challenges on why we're not building as much wind and solar. One of them has to do with the certainty of those contracts. And what we're doing is a change that's basically going to allow the Illinois Power Agency to hold the funds to pay their existing contracts and not get new contracts if they identify a problem coming up. So that means that a developer will know that they're going to get the money they need if they are committing to a 20-year project. If we do get pinched, and the idea is to give the Illinois Power Agency the planning horizon to not get pinched, but if we do, what would happen is they would then, instead of still procuring new projects, they would just make sure that they pay off the projects that we've committed to. So it's just a way to balance the responsibility and put the decision-making process in a way that is going to reduce risk and the hesitancy that we see out of the developers. that's really stopped our renewable energy growth. We've got a Kankakee workforce hub, those hubs I talked about briefly, the workforce hubs in CEJA. We've got one in Kankakee that we just need to establish funding for. There may be something on data centers, we'll see. It's a negotiated bill, so some things are up in the air. There's going to be another training that the Illinois Environmental Council is doing on the 3rd, which will be closer to the actual legislative session. And so you can attend that to kind of get the final details of what we've negotiated. This is going to be people working between now and the new year on figuring out this energy package. So it's a very live issue. Next slide. And this is some things about the bill that we had proposed and that might be what we get in the spring, might be what we push for. It might be something a little bit different because we'll see what we get in lame duck. And so I won't go too far into here because lame duck is kind of what we're aiming for. And then we can reorient in the spring when we see where things fall in lame duck. And with that, that's what I have on the power sector. Sorry, I think I went a little bit longer than I intended to, but I appreciate everybody listening, and I'm going to hand it off to Cindy to talk about buildings.
Hey, thanks, Andrew. And that's really exciting that we've got a bill that we'll actually be talking about when we go on for the Lame Duck Lobby Day. I know a lot of you probably have been taking notes madly during that power section, so just shake out your hand here and we'll talk a little bit about clean buildings. Clean and Healthy Buildings Act is not ready for the legislature during the thing, but it is something that's live for all of us and that we can be involved with not only at the state legislative session, but also with municipalities and city ordinances as well. 10 years ago, I moved into this house. I was really excited about making it more energy efficient. And I said to the sustainability manager for Urbana, yeah, I've done this and this and this, and we're going to get solar. And he goes, yeah, but you still have a gas furnace, right? And I never thought that the gas, that I'm actually burning fossil fuels in my home, but we have relied for gas in our homes for cooking, those gas stoves that the Republicans are so excited about protecting. The heating, definitely, I've still got my gas furnace and hot water heater. Moved to electric for my stove and my dryer, so I'm on the way. But we found out not only are we burning fossil fuels when we use gas in our homes, but there are other health risks that we didn't know about 10 years ago. Next slide. The risks are to our health and our pocketbooks, as well as our climate. All that gas that gets burned in our homes, there is a risk of having the gases that especially affect vulnerable people with vulnerabilities in their health. That means young children, older people, those who have lung problems are adversely affected. And research has shown that even using those wonderful gas stoves increases the chance that children in the home will suffer from asthma. So there's definitely a health risk. We also have seen as gas prices have gone up and up and up, that's this vulnerability for our pocketbooks as well. And one of the things that we're working on with the Clean Jobs Coalition is a way to protect people who are not able to make a lot of the decisions about the gas appliances in their homes. So 1/3 of all Illinois residents live in apartments or they rent their homes and don't have control over whether or not they get a new induction stove. So fewer and fewer, as more of us move to electric appliances, fewer people will have to pay the cost for the gas infrastructure that brings all that gas to residences. And the Clean Jobs Coalition is working on ways that we can protect those vulnerable populations at the same time that we lower our health risks and our climate risks. You can move next way. Oh, I jumped the gun there, but we did talk about asthma, and I will add that residential gas combustion is one of the most racially inequitable forms of pollution because people of color are exposed to gas and the fumes that come from gas appliances 41% more than white people, partially because of income, partially because of historical racial segregation. in our home patterns. And so this is really something that's important for us as a society to get right as we make a transition to cleaner forms of energy. Gas is expensive. You know that because you pay your Ameren bill. But did you know that Illinois is also #1 in the nation for shutting gas off? And there's no rules in Illinois currently that keeps gas from being shut off at particular times of year or times of need. Black and Latino households in Illinois are twice as likely as white households to experience gas disconnection compared to white people. And working with families who have undergone that experience, it's like overdraft at the bank. It takes a lot more money to get the gas started again than it did that was owed in the beginning. So it's a very, very difficult, expensive, and inequitable proposition. And finally, of course, we know that gas is bad for the climate. Our gas power peaker plants are bad, but so is the gas that we burn in our homes. And 22% of Illinois' greenhouse gas emissions do come from fossil fuels burned in buildings, actually in our homes, our schools, and our institutions. We have technology to move beyond gas. We have the ability to make these choices. A gas stove can be changed to an induction stove that's just as responsive and just as easy to cook on. Gas furnaces can be replaced by heat pump space heaters or by geothermal technology. Gas water heaters can be replaced with heat pump water heaters that use electricity. Those can often be installed with a geothermal unit, for instance, or when the heat pump space heater comes into town. And of course, gas clothes dryers can be replaced by electric clothes dryers. And that when I first bought a dryer in my life, a gas dryer was a lot cheaper to run than an electric dryer, but that's not true. That's not true anymore. So making the switch to using clean heat in our, or clean sources of energy in our buildings can save us money. Lifetime savings ranging from almost $25,000 to almost $50,000 through 2055 just comes from just switching electric powered appliances over to those alternatives that are available now. Also, the benefits are in the job market and the green energy jobs of the future. Twice as many workers are employed with electrification and the clean grid than under fossil fuel supplying. Thanks to the Inflation Reduction Act and CEJA, there are many financial resources for consumers to invest in energy efficiency and electrification. And there are some wonderful guides out there. Our partners at the Citizens Utility Board have one that's printed on your screen right now. That's certainly something for you to check out as you think about your own homes and the people that you care about, helping them move to electric heat. There's a good source for you. The Clean and Healthy Buildings Act, which will probably be in part of the spring session, but that we're talking to our legislators about this time just to set the scene and let them know that there is grassroots support for clean and healthy buildings, envisions things like this. New buildings need to be all electric. The cost of running a gas line into a neighborhood and then to each home increases the cost of energy, and it increases the cost of the home. So new buildings could be all electric. One of the things that we do when we advocate is for making small steps first. So we started with FEJA and then we got CEJA, and now we're going back to work on things that need improvement from CEJA. Starting by saying that all new buildings must be all electric is one way to get into the residential market, to show that it works, to help people experience the benefits, and to reduce the amount of money that we're spending on gas infrastructure that will be wearing out in the next 20 years before we have reached our climate goals. The second point that I want us to remember is that, yes, that transition needs to happen by 2050, and if we keep building gas, we'll just be throwing good money after bad. So considering all the important benefits of clean and healthy buildings makes it affordable for us to think about making those changes. Next. In a Clean and Healthy Buildings Act, we need to have policies in place that support consumers. As I said at the very beginning, it's important to have a planned transition off of the gas system, because as more and more people who are able to easily leave, like homeowners and those who are making decisions about what kind of electric clothes dryer to buy, we're leaving people. We cannot afford to leave people behind. And the people that are not able to make those decisions can't afford to pay for all of the gas infrastructure themselves. There's a kind of a death spiral upward in gas prices if fewer and fewer people pay for those consumers. So that's one of the things that the Clean and Healthy Buildings Act will address. We think that part of that happens because we'll have a state navigator program that will make it easy for consumers to find electrification resources. That's kind of been a hit and miss. The utilities have done some, companies have done others, environmental groups have done other ways to navigate, but we're hoping that there will be a unified plan so that we'll all have the same access to the same information. We also want to include a low income discount rate so that low-income customers have access to a discounted utility and they don't bear the brunt of other people's leaving. And consumer protections for those who can't be disconnected from essential utility services because of inability to afford the monthly bill. So those vulnerable populations that suffer from disconnection of their energy services would be protected, especially low-income customers over 65, often have medical needs that need to have the power on in their home, low-income customers with children, and individuals who have qualified medical conditions that will also need reliable power. So those consumer protections will also be part of the bill. So this is my logo for Faith in Place. And I want to talk to you a little bit. That clean bill will be something that we talk to legislators about in the spring session, but we do want to let people know that we are coming to support that when we talk to them on Lobby Day. Say, hey, I'm here because of the Clean and Healthy Buildings Act. Let's talk a little bit about just the logistics of Lobby Day. For many of you, I know this isn't your first Lobby Day, but maybe this will be a little reminder so that you can help those who are joining for the first time kind of get into the swing of things. It can be a really wonderful and exciting day. Do you have the rest of my slides, Giselle? Yes. Okay, great. Oh, this is our little bonus issue from the IEC. Is that there's a Farewell to Foam Act. It has a bill. It was passed by the House at the last in the last session, and Senator Faraci is going to be asked to support that. So those of us who are going to talk to him have done some work to prepare him to vote for that bill, which will outlaw styrofoam takeout containers for restaurants in Illinois. This is something that a lot of our neighbors, especially our Canadian neighbors, have done to protect the Great Lakes and to protect our soil and water. And we're saying it's time for Illinois to join that. Again, it's a small step that'll make a big difference. When we go on January the 7th, 2025, we hopefully will not be outside for a rally, but we may take a big picture someplace like that. And here's some things that you want to know if you're getting prepared to get to go to Springfield. There are lots of ways to influence legislation, and I know that many of you have done phone calls, emails, letters. You've gone to the offices of our representatives and senators. A trip to Springfield is really cool and different in some ways. For one thing, it's fun and it involves a bus. Next. There are a few things that it's important to say, and I thought of another one before as I was thinking about this slide earlier. And that is, even if you play golf with Representative Ammons or Senator Faraci, when we're in the Capitol, we always call them Representative Ammons and Senator Faraci, rather than, hey, Paul, hey, Carol, good to see ya, buddy. It's a small thing, but it sets what we're doing apart from just visiting with our friends and our neighbors from the community. When we visit them, it's also important that you say who you are. That's just your name. It's not all your qualifications and your background and your expertise or lack thereof. But say who you are and say why this issue matters to you. It matters to you because you've experienced a lot of benefits from a solar system at your house of worship or on your home. Tell them why you're interested in clean power and all the benefits that it has. Maybe it's a grandchild. Maybe it's a health condition. Maybe it's the love that you've always had for the glaciers and wanting to not see them go away. Then if you have a chance to speak, you'll ask them to either sponsor a bill, vote for a bill, or vote against a bill. So the two bills that we've got are the Farewell to Foam bill and the skinny Clean Grid bill. You'll ask them to vote for those bills. And then although they may or may not commit to that, we'll always want to thank them for their time that day and also thank them for the incredible dedication that it takes to be a public servant and to execute the duties of being one of our elected representatives. I think before I went to Lobby Day the first time, I had a somewhat jaundiced view about what politicians do. But I have learned that even those that I do not agree with spend an awful lot of time and energy figuring out what's going on and what's important. And they count on citizens to let them know. So it's really great that even though we're going to go in a big crowd, we're not all going to have a meaningful moment with our legislator, but because we are there, it means a lot to them. They understand then that people in their district care about these issues, care enough to get themselves educated about it and to get on a bus and come to Springfield. And that makes a huge difference. One of his first lobby days, Senator Bennett, rest his soul, took me aside and said to me, "Wow, Cindy, look at all these green shirts." And it just makes a difference that we're there. So that's important. The details are also a little bit important. We're going to leave from the First Mennonite Church at the corner of Springfield and Lincoln. They have a nice parking lot in the back, and you can leave your car there for the day. If you'd like, the bus will pick us up back there. If you have a poster, bring a poster. We're bringing a class from the campus middle school. They'll all have posters, but if you've got one left over from last time, or if you'd like to make a new one, that's great. No sticks on those posters, please. Please bring a refillable water bottle, if possible, especially if you're going to be up front during the Farewell to Foam. Let's not have any plastic water bottles. That's just kind of silly. We'll have things to eat and drink on the bus. No worries. Wear comfy clothes and walking shoes. Hope for good weather. But we will be rallying inside, so there's no need to dress in your snowsuit to come to the Capitol. It'll be livable inside. We don't have t-shirts this year. We're going to have campaign buttons, and you can count on not being hungry. We'll have snacks for the bus, and lunch will be provided at the Capitol. We'll gather at 7:30 in the morning and leave at 8 o'clock in the morning. And then we will leave the Capitol by 2 o'clock at the latest and return to Urbana to our starting point by 3:30. there will be, you will start getting emails when you're registered. You'll start getting emails from about the bus and those details, or you can always email me or Giselle, right? So I'm really excited that you're all going. It's really a great experience, and I always look forward to it. And I'm looking forward to seeing you and your loved ones along with you on the bus on January 7th. That's all I've got about Lobby Day. Giselle, are you wrapping us up?
I actually think Andrew wanted to say something real quick on,
Yeah, I just wanted to
yeah.
know, I know some folks here might be interested in the rural electric cooperatives. We do have something in our power sector bill, not for the lame duck, but for the spring on rural electric cooperatives involving some accountability and reporting that is currently absent. So requirements that would just help with transparency is our focus there. And I think negotiations for that are also happening in ongoing. So while that's not going to be in the January focus, that is still a key part of the energy portfolio that we're pushing for in overall, and will be part of the spring conversation. So just flagging that. Yeah, I think that's it. Do we want to do questions?
I think we have a little time. Not much, but
There will be written material. So Illinois Environmental Council is organizing the whole lobby day, and they're going to be providing some written materials. So we'll circulate those by email. So if you sign up, don't feel like this is the last like content that you'll have. You'll have some paper, fact sheets, that kind of stuff to look at. And I think we'll email out the link. You can scan this QR code with your phone, but also just check your email for the registration link. And that does close on the 19th, where I believe it'll switch to a wait list. The Illinois Environmental Council is just concerned about capacity. And so they want to get people confirmed by the 19th, kind of figure out what capacity they can support. And then that wait list, they'll, as people update their availability, the wait list will shift. I can stop talking.
yeah. I think if anyone wants to come off mute or send any questions in the chat that they had, we could take a little time to do that. Something else I want to shout out again, as Andrew said, this isn't going to be the last time that you could find out more information. If you register, IEC will be sending out a link to register for their lobby day briefing happening on the 3rd at noon. So just putting that date out there, more to come if you do register.
I would forget everything over the New Year's and Christmas and all the other holidays. So I think, their training would be helpful, and they'll have some more details. Michael, I see your question in the chat about where to meet. I don't have the full timing, but the east, typically we meet on the east side of the Capitol or inside the Capitol building. You'll have to go through security. So it won't be hard to find people. It would just, if you show up at the same time. And we could probably look into some parking locations for folks who are not. Cindy, do you have a thought there?
Just that we'll have each other's phone numbers so that we will be able to text and figure out where everybody is. We won't leave anybody behind.
I don't know Springfield well enough to recommend parking spots with EV chargers if you're looking for that, but I do know a number of people who know Springfield pretty well and have EVs, so I can propose some ideas.
Oh, exciting. Does anyone else have anything else that they want to, it doesn't have to be a question, it can also be a comment, or we could wrap up early. Okay. I'm going to take that as everyone's all set. Thank you guys so much for coming out. It really means a lot to all of us here that you're making the effort and time to show up in the middle of the day and listen to us talk. We will send out an email after with all the registration links and some more information in our email. So please feel free to reach out at any time to ask us more questions. And hopefully we'll see you on the 7th. Okay. Thank you guys so much. Bye.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Zip.
Thanks, Angie and
Bye-bye.
Cindy.